Hello, everybody. How are you today? This
There we go. Now
Wednesday. There you are, Tim.
there we go.
Tim,
Technical difficulty.
I turned into somebody else. I thought, you know what I thought? The mothership had finally come down and turned into somebody. It could happen. It could happen.
Yes, pod people.
Those pod people. Well, I sure am glad to see you today, Tym Moss.
It is so good to see you. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it, but I'm here for a while today.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
How are you?
Oh, God. How am I?
Well, firstly, you're watching If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts, Tym Moss and
Wendy Stuart. Hi, it's just been an insane frenzy. First of all, I had the most incredible time at the Stonewall. I love that. The Stonewall for Chauncey Dandridge's
the
Madonna worship night. And worship they did, ladies and gentlemen. They turned out. Of course, I always have to call out Esther Zapata is one of my favorite. I call them Madonna channelers. First of all, Esther looks just like Madonna, and she's got the whole Madonna thing down. It is often, you know what, it's like watching Madonna. It's great. Let's face it, I will probably never get to see Madonna up close. If I get to see her, it's going to be like a nosebleed seat somewhere. So Esther's performances are great. Jack Tracy performed that night. Bear Donna performed. So I had the best time, and I channeled my inner Madonna. I was turning out that hairdo that night.
Yes.
You know? People asked me if I was from the Blonde Ambition tour. I'm like, sure. I had no idea what they were talking about. But Tim, the best, Jersey City Pride on Sunday. We did a show. Lady Clover Honey was the person who was our MC. This show is produced by Evan Lawrence. And it's the Corky Distillery in Jersey City. I'm like, why are we having it there? But then I came to find out they're a big supporter of the LGBTQ plus community. And for those of you in Jersey City, what a great place. They are a real distillery. It is gorgeously turned out inside. They have a great outdoor performance area, and the vodka and the gin are pure Tym Moss, absolutely pure. It was great. So you can have yourself a little cocktail while you're there too. So it's all been fun. I have missed you like madly. I go on Facebook and I see these crazy videos of you and Ike Avelli in a car laughing at the top of your lungs, and he doesn't have glasses on. What the heck is that about?
Yeah, we were just kind of swerving all over the road. He was trying to watch what you like without glasses. But speaking of Madonna and Stonewall, Chauncey Dandridge, who's our producer, and he's also one of the DJs, the top DJs at the Stonewall, and a huge Madonna fan. Yep. And also I think it was last week, wasn't it? Or the week before, he went roller skating in Central Park with Madonna.
Right.
That was so cool. She had a roller skating party, and only a select few made the cut, and he was one of them. I thought that was fabulous.
No, it was totally fabulous. And the video that he shot from it, Madonna, like I think two of her kids were holding her up. Plus she had not to put her down for being held up. Like I said to Chauncey, I'm like, God forbid she could break a hip at this age.
Yeah.
So we don't think because you know what? She looked like she was 24 years old.
Yeah.
And she looked amazing, and she was roller skating. It was so fun.
Absolutely. I just got back from Florida I had went down to do my cabaret show, my one-man show down at the pub in Wilton Manors in Fort Lauderdale. It was amazing, absolutely amazing experience. Full house turnout. It was great. I loved it. I had a wonderful time. And then the next day, we did a full reading of Little House on the Ferry, and which Rob Gould had written. And then Monday, I did a television taping on a show called Faye What?
Oh, I like that.
And it had an absolute ball. That was absolutely wonderful. Went to Orlando. We stopped by and recorded 2 songs that Rob Gould from Little House on the Ferry had written. One was for me, a personal song for me, which I loved. And another one was another song I recorded for him. And then we went to a water park in Orlando, which was so much fun. I hadn't done that in so many years. Well, no, actually, I did it earlier.
Tim, you love water parks
with my nieces. I forgot about that, but we had so much fun. It was an absolute ball. And then I get back. I did laundry, repacked, and turned around and went to Philadelphia with Ike. That's where you saw us in the car laughing our ass off.
Nathan James had a birthday.
Yeah. Yes, and it was Nathan James' birthday. Happy birthday, Nathan.
Journalist Nathan James, wonderful, wonderful journalist. And
journalist, author. He's the vice president of My Brother's House, which finds housing for veterans across the country. And
I didn't realize that. Wow.
He does so much for so many. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he's an amazing human being. So, yeah.
Well, I don't know.
So yeah, I'm back in New York. Actually, I'll be back here for a little while, for a few weeks. So I'm looking forward to
welcome back, Cotter, as they say.
Yes.
My lights are just moving around all over the place here.
Yeah, I noticed.
We are having technical difficulties here, but never mind those technical difficulties.
Absolutely.
We have a really.
Well, Firstly, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for tuning in to If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts, Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss. And we will be right back with our wonderful, incredible guest, John Pietaro. I'm going to ask him if I said that correctly, but I think that was it. So go ahead.
And what I want to tell you about our guest, his latest work is part punk rock, part dirge, part jazz. He's a writer. He's a poet. He is a king of spoken word and a musician. And his latest book is called, I just love the title.
I do too.
Bleeding in Black Leather, which he's going to tell us more about. Okay. Let's explore John Pietaro's journey. John, welcome to the show. Yay!
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me on.
My gosh, it's so great to have you here with us today. I mean, you know what? You're like New York royalty, John.
Oh, no. The royalties and king, that all sounds, I come from more of a proletariat vision.
I love
so you are. Thank you.
New York I can't even say
proletariat.
Thank you. See, I make Tim say the hard words for me because he's from the Midwest originally. He knows how to say those words.
But firstly, right out of the box, we need to find out how you're feeling because you were just diagnosed with COVID recently.
Right. Well, even before that, I want to first congratulate you two. From my understand, being chosen by the Hollywood Digest as an elite summer pick.
Yes.
So,
Thank you. That was so nice.
Now we tried to say that we were the proletariat summer pick.
Thank you. That makes me feel a little bit better as I'm a union organizer. So.
Thank you. Yeah, it was quite an honor.
Yeah, for sure. But as far as my health goes, this is day 7 now. And I almost feel like, what do they used to say, like day 190 of the people who are being held captive in Iran. That's kind of how it feels. I love my apartment, but I
not
hate
that much
being closed in, and that's it. But it's coming along. Hey, I hope that within a few days I test negative and can get back out into the world.
Good. You will.
Absolutely.
You will.
And you are taking, and I want people to hear this, there is a drug that will lessen the symptoms and lessen the length of COVID, and it is accessible. You just have to have your doctor call for it. Am I correct?
That's right. Yeah. And it was free. I believe it's a federal government perk. So we have that ability to, even if a person has no insurance, I have insurance, but they didn't charge it.
Wow.
So Paxlovid, I think it's
Paxlovid, yeah.
And it really helps a lot because the first few days I wouldn't have been able to keep conversation going. I would, instead of pausing every 7 minutes for a station break, I'd be pausing every 8 seconds for a cough. So let's go through that.
I like you, John. You're a funny guy. And you know what? When you see your pictures, you're handsome, daring, but there's very, very, very edgy. And of course, Lori, your other half and an amazing PR person, said to me, John's a pussycat. And I'm finding that to be true. So thank you.
I'm not half bad, I guess. So
You're
I'll
not,
try.
you're not a half bad guy. Now, you guys had just finished up a performance at Bowery Electric. Am I right about that? Tell us what you were doing there.
Yeah, that was something very near and dear to my heart. As a writer, one of my great influences is Bertolt Brecht. And this past Sunday, the 14th of August, was the anniversary of his passing, which actually happened in 1956. But we called it the Brecht Lives Festival and had a good crowd in the map room of BE. And I think that's where a number of us might have contracted this particular gift as a result. So, but it was great. We had so many people up there, Puma Pearl, Ron Colm, a lot of the people who are the standard bearers of poetry downtown, as well as some of the folks. That was the poster. I'm not sure if it's visible, but that's the poster that I made for the event. I think it's
cool.
There.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah, and it included so many wonderful people. Elliot Sharp, Tracy Morris, the poet she's as great a vocalist as she is a poet. I don't know where those kind of genes come from, but wow. R.B. Corbett, who currently plays bass with Bush Tetras, she was there doing a solo piece. George Wallace, the poet. John S. Hall, the poet, who sang. It was just great. I mean, we had so many people. Lindsay Wilson. God, she's someone you should have on. Lindsay Wilson's this amazing vocalist and songwriter and fearless person. But we had so many people on. It was just almost 4.5 hours of poetry.
John, what is it in particular that I have to tell you something? Don't judge me on this. I had to take a class on Brecht in college, and I had to get Cliff Notes. I know that is sad. What is it about the writings of Brecht that are so appealing to you?
Well, I mean, just for me personally, I'm a very left-wing guy. I'm a Marxist. I have no hiding of that, and so was he. But he also didn't believe in the hardcore edge of what communism became. I mean, he lived in East Germany the last part of his life, but he was somebody who was always, if he wasn't Brecht, he would have probably ended up in the gulag, is what I think. But this is somebody who fought against the power all the time. And it was beautifully done because he's such an artist and he was just as much a revolutionist. The other person that moves me that much is over my shoulder here is John Reed, an American version of Brecht who kind of gave up so much of his opportunity to be a successful journalist and poet and playwright in order to focus on the righting of the wrongs, to help
the righting of the wrongs, right?
Well, in this case, he wrote a lot about the wrongs too.
That's what I mean. It can be WRIGH, but you're onto something here because I guess my next question was going to be, look at the mess we're in now, right? So who do we have that you can think of, or Tim can think of, that could fall into this area that are both artists and revolutionary people?
It's not easy. I can say that. But the young woman I just mentioned before, though, Lindsay Wilson, and many of the folks who were on the bill of this, for years, before this COVID, I was also facilitating and organizing an event called the Dissident Arts Festival. We ran that. Lori and I ran that from 2006. We started it, and it ran almost consistently until COVID. So there's a lot of artists out there who are very fearless, but of course you can't turn it into something hard to listen to. People have to want to believe. It has to be good art. Good art can't be hidden behind bad protest or vice versa. You need to be able.
God, that's so brilliant. Good art can't be hidden behind bad protest. Boy, ain't that the truth, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems that you run into. There'll be some great, even it could even be a rock and roll person or any other rap. After a while, it gets hard to listen to all the harsh, all the negative. So maybe I should smile more often in my photos for that reason.
Well, speaking of which, you're watching If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts, Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss, and our wonderful and incredibly interesting guest, John Pietaro.
Yeah.
Yay!
Such a pleasure to be here, guys.
So,
now, you wear so many hats, all kind of, you're very artistically fluid. Where have you always been like that, or where do you think that stems from?
That's a good question. I don't know. When I was very young,
in Brooklyn,
originally. In Bensonhurst,
yep. Blue collar. It was white blue collar hell, with very little artistic anything going on. I remember being very, very young and having watercolors and painting and thinking, oh, I'm going to be an artist. And this is something I go into in the book, actually, because some of the pieces in the book are semi-autobiographical. I saw 2 movies on television. I must have been 8 years old, I was. And one of them was 1,000 Clowns. I don't know if you remember it. Jason Robards.
Yeah.
Right. And he plays a writer. It was an amazing Broadway play, which I'd love to see on stage. And then it was made into this film. But he's a writer who says, I'm not going to do this stupid commercial work he was doing. And there was just something about this guy. He was so free-spirited. And this is back in the day when there were low-rent districts in Manhattan.
Right.
And the movie was from 1965, I think. And Robards' character, Murray Burns, goes every Sunday morning. He goes into the high-rent district and screams out, "Rich people, wake up!" like early in the morning, just to screw with these people. And as a little kid, I thought, this guy's crazy, but I love this character.
Identified.
Like, what is this thing? What is he, a writer? What does that mean? And I somehow, I started writing stories, and then that became a thing. But I guess, when I was a young teenager, I started playing music as a drummer. And you know how it goes. That seems much cooler when you're 14 or 15. So I still wrote, but the drumming became kind of in the front. And over the years, I guess it slipped back and forth. But over recent years.
What style of drumming were you doing?
Oh, well, mostly it was jazz. I mean, I wanted it to be jazz. I'm not sure that it really was when I was young.
And the thing with jazz is that that's all improv. It's all improvised. It's all make it up as you go along, so that every time you perform, it's different, even though it's the same song.
Right.
So
absolutely,
you've always kind of had that walk on the edge and go literally to the beat of your own drum.
Well put. The complexity of it. That is very well put, Tim. Exactly.
Yeah, no, I think that's for sure. And let's face it. I mean, we're all, more or less within the same age group. I turned 60 this year. And I can tell you that when I was growing up, jazz was far from popular. It had already long bypassed that. And, that in itself was an independent thing. I remember kids saying to me, "What the hell's the matter with you?" in high school. I'm playing drums, and all I wanted to do was be Gene Krupa or Max Roach or Elvin Jones or one of those people. And everybody was listening to disco or hard rock.
Hard rock was so big during that time when you were into, did you have jazz influence in your home? Either parent listened to jazz or?
My parents were both born, my father was born in 1929, so he certainly grew up with the big band years. My mother was a little bit younger, not much. So they still listen to big band records.
Big band.
So I did get to hear that, but real actual jazz like Tim, you were describing with like serious improv, they really didn't listen to that. I started discovering it. I was one of those weird kids that when I went to high school in Bensonhurst, I would cut classes a lot, but I didn't smoke pot, in the alleyway near the school. I would go to the library a lot of the time and look for these books on jazz history. And I was blown away by this. But at the same time, I discovered the writings of Brecht.
I knew you were going to say that too. You have this is a very complex mind,
Yeah,
these are complex people, jazz, and as Tim brought out, what jazz is. So it's interesting to me because in those days, right, who came out of Bensonhurst, my husband came out of Bensonhurst. he's 20 years older than you, but an artist, very complex. But he was definitely the odd person out in school and in Seth Low Junior High School. He was the odd. Were you the odd person out?
I mean, I think I was, to some degree. I wasn't so into it that I spoke about it. I was a quiet kid in the corner most of the time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And, I was smallish and heavyish. And I was one of those people that kind of was like, overlooked. But when no one was looking, I was constantly drawing and at that period and writing. And then when I started playing the drums about, shortly thereafter, that became like a fascination for me. I could be walking down, if I went into Manhattan, walking down Broadway, and in the middle of Times Square, there used to be some crazy guy who would set up his whole drum set. I don't know if you remember this. He set up a whole drum set in the middle of Times Square and just solo. Yeah. Keep playing. And it was like, God, I was one of the people that would stand there and watch him the times that I would go into Midtown. I was like, this guy, he's like a superhero, So,
oh my God, it's so cool.
What nerve it takes.
Yes. Now you're listening to, or you're watching If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts, Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss, our amazing and wonderful guest, which we have so much more that we want to delve into, Mr. John Pietaro.
Yay!
Now, you mentioned drawing. You were drawing. You found the drums. You also got into writing. Like how all of this is like you're kind of going down the stream, your own stream of artistic expression. Different artistic expressions. Did you ever find like a similarity between them all, or were you searching for something?
Yeah, I think I did. I mean, when you think about, there are some aspects of jazz, let's say, particularly within the Beat generation, where spoken word poetry was being used as part of the music.
Absolutely.
So not just Kerouac and Ginsberg and my personal favorite among them, probably not visible, but William Burroughs. This is
William Burroughs,
shirt. So but Burroughs, I don't think he was too much into the music, although later in the 80s, when he was living downtown on the Bowery, he started working kind of in a very off-kilter way with punk rock musicians and experimental artists and people like that. So to me, the confluence between spoken word and music was always so important. And I guess if I had my druthers, we would have in the band that Lori and I have, the band is the Red Microphone. We would have a visual artist there always doing artwork during it. We only occasionally have that, but I would like to see a lot of bands have a huge sheet of some kind, or giant tarp where a visual artist could create while the music is ongoing. I think that would really work for me.
I have only seen that one time, and it was a show of course, on the Lower East Side that I went to. And you are absolutely. I wonder why people don't do that more.
I don't know. It's very strange. In this ensemble that we have, one of the saxophonists, his wife, they're both very good friends, Denise Jacovone, she is a wonderful visual artist. She did the artwork on the disc. Actually, the piece that is on the new album, which I think Lori gave you a copy of. Wendy?
Gave it to me, Bleeding in Black Leather.
It's the same name. I wanted them to correspond.
Yeah, of course.
And but the visual art on the artwork was created while we were recording the album.
Wow.
So she was in the studio with us.
Nice.
And at times we've had her on the gigs as well. But it's not the same. I would like it to be, the creation to be in the public's eye, while she's working on it. And it's growing.
Nice.
Yeah, right.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Now, one of the things that so impresses me is your heartbeat is the beat of the urban epicenter. Like you artistically interpret urban life. So can you touch on that a little bit? Like what is the appeal of urban life?
Sure.
in your philosophy.
And with what Tim said, to build on that, if you can talk a little bit about coming upon Leonard Cohen's the day he died and what you saw that day, because those things go hand in hand. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I guess to answer the first part of that, I'm a Brooklynite. I was born with, asphalt under my feet. It's just there, right? And I have no problem with that. And and some of that is not always pretty. And Bensonhurst was not necessarily an easygoing place then. Now oddly enough, now it's mostly a neighborhood of recent Chinese immigrants and a lot of
and Russian.
Yeah, Russian people, Hasidim. There's a nice mix of people now. Oddly enough, Middle Eastern people and Mexican people. Then it was all white, Italian. The handful of Jews and Irish that were there were kind of hanging off for dear life because it was not exactly an easy place to be. And it was very, very Italian centric. I fought against that aspect my entire adult life. I avoided that like the plague. And at one point we lived in downtown Brooklyn, and really to move away from that feeling because it never felt healthy. But the urbanity of it is something that I've always loved. And so for me, it's not only where I'm from, but it's I guess it's in our blood. We New Yorkers, even if you're not originally from here, it gets in you and it's in there. So for me, that's such an important piece to it. And so I don't know, and especially at this point, not to get too political with it, but at this point, when we have people in the Midwest and in the South, a lot of more rural people making negative remarks about what goes on in New York or LA or Chicago, I'm thinking, how dare you? We've developed cultures over the course of a couple of 100 years, which is a mix of every person in the human race that's walked these floors. And so like this building, frankly, that Lori and I live in, we're in Lower Bay Ridge. And the cool thing is, one of my favorite artists, Hubert Selby Jr., one of my favorite writers, he lived in this building as a child. And I found that out only after we were in the process of buying this apartment.
That's amazing.
Nice.
And that's the guy who wrote Last Exit to Brooklyn. That's his, it's not exactly uplifting, but that's his most famous book. And you can't get more urban, right, than that. You take that idea and you sort of say, well, how do I express it? And to me, it comes out in poetry and in short stories. I guess I should quickly mention my first book, which it took me a long time to try to put anything into a book. I did it independently, and it's called Night People and Other Tales of Working New York.
Right.
So, and it's basically mostly it takes place at night, and it's people who are workers in all different fields. I mentioned before, I'm a union organizer. I would say by day, but it spills into my nights a lot. That's my day job. So that's my first book. My second book was one that I also put out independently, a chapbook of poetry called Smoke Rings. And that one is basically about nightlife, jazz and rock clubs and cabarets and what have you. It all has the feel and the taste of nightlife. My third book, I thought I had one here and I don't, sorry. But my third book is basically short stories and I'm sorry, it's all poetry. And that was more of a collection. And then the last one is the Bleeding in Black Leather. And this one kind of pulls all that together, I think.
And I have Smoke Rings here.
Yes, that's right.
As well. So I am going to get back to Leonard Cohen then, with everything.
Before we do that, I just want to say thank you for watching If These Walls Could Talk with your host, Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss, and our amazing guest, Renaissance man.
Really?
Mr. John Pietaro. Pietaro. Is that right?
Okay.
Pietaro. Just don't call me late for dinner.
Okay.
John. So with the artists that you're attracted to, with your own poetry, I read both books, right? No, but you know what? I would have to go back and read them 10 times over. All right, that was a skim, okay, because it's intense, and the words and the way you work with words. Leonard Cohen, it's not an obvious choice. I get Allen Ginsberg with you. I get that. I get Brecht. What was it about Leonard Cohen that impacted you so much that you wrote the piece about the day he died?
Yeah. Well, that's actually one of the biographical pieces in the book. That's exactly what happened. I mean, almost exactly word for word. I was on my way to a meeting on 23rd Street, which happens to be in a building across from the Chelsea Hotel. And, Chelsea, of course, is so iconic, especially the people in the arts here in New York. It's amazing. And so I've always loved going there. And whenever I had to go into this other building, it was always great. I would walk by and see the Chelsea. Well, the Chelsea at that point was under scaffolding, you might remember, at that period when he passed on.
Absolutely.
So there was this scaffolding over it, and it was kind of out of my head. And I got off the subway, and it was after work, and I was tired, and I walked in the wrong direction, and it was all this exactly what I say in this story. And I'm trying to hurry up now to make up for the lost time so I wouldn't be late. And I see this crowd, and I thought, what's going on? And I went, oh yeah, I had just seen it in social media or whatever, and that he had died. And it made me stop. I was rushing, it made me just stop. And I thought, I'll get to that meeting. It's okay. They'll wait for me. And I had to get into the crowd. I just stood there for a few minutes with them, and it just entered me, And as I said in the piece, which is really prose, and then it goes into poetry.
Yes.
But as I say in that, somebody had a big, like a boombox, and they were playing some of his music. But when I walked in, it was Suzanne, which is the piece that, like you said it earlier, Wendy. Yeah. It just touches so much. For all the anger and the toughness or whatever that so many of these other poets and writers that I love, Cohen could be real cold and really removed, but he could touch you so deeply. And that's something that, like, boom, and I stopped short. And, just the voice and the very sparse guitar playing. And I just stood there and I got the chills. And I just remember, like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And this is before I had a good phone, or any of us had a good phone camera, I guess. What was it, like 2016, I think? And I just wish I took a picture of this gathering because it felt so authentic. Then I also didn't want to invade on the space of the folks who are out there, the mourners.
Right.
So maybe it's for the best. But, Cohen had this ability to lure you in a different way. And if you read anything about him, he was terrified of the stage.
I know. Yeah.
Had the worst time trying to feel comfortable, and then unfortunately dabbled a little too much, in different substances to try to feel better. Sometimes he couldn't go back on because he was on hallucinogens or whatever. I mean, this is all written of. I'm not outing him or anything.
Of course, right.
So, he really suffered, and you can hear that pain. Whether he was writing about performance or not isn't the issue. You can feel it because I guess as he was getting more successful, he knew he'd be performing some of these things. Hallelujah. I mean, and then you
so many great ones, right?
So much, and you can tap into other people's performances of those, and it gives you K.D. Lang doing Hallelujah. It's probably the greatest version there will ever be. And listening to that, I always get the chills. And it's not just for her voice. It's also for exactly what he was putting out. She was able to help him realize it in a way that he couldn't even. It was just, oh, God. So in a long-winded way, that answers that question, I think.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah. Now, once again, you're watching If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts, Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss, and our very special guest, John Pietaro. Yay. And his book, A Bleeding in Black Leather. Now, when you write poetry, because one of the things that I loved is you put the jazz background or the jazz tracks while you were reading this piece. and the audio is so amazing. The two blend so well together. How did you put all of that together?
You mean on the album?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. Well, again, it's just an outgrowth, and that's the new record. It's available actually as of this morning, I think, or yesterday morning.
Oh, perfect.
If you go to the band's Bandcamp page, Bandcamp is something I'm only learning about in the last while, but Bandcamp I think it's .theredmicrophone.com. And it's out on ESP disc. That the last two albums have been out on the ESP disc label, the underground jazz label that's been around for 60 some odd years. It's just an outgrowth of what we've done live. Sometimes Lori and I perform as a duo, and again, Lori being my wife, Lori Towers, I should give her full credit.
Yay!
Not just a
fabulous
publicist,
person.
right? Yeah, Lori is an amazing bass player, and when we work together as a duo, we don't really need anything else. We've been working together as a duo in different formats for a long time. I mean, I'm still a percussionist, and I'll incorporate some of that, but I don't really have to when she's playing bass. She carries it all. The band, though, we formed the band initially in 2010 with myself and she and two saxophonists, Ross Moshe Burnett, who's an absolute monster, who comes from the Coltrane tradition, and Rocco John Iacovone, who comes more from he's an alto player, more from the West Coast Lee Konitz sort of style. He was actually a long-term student of Lee Konitz. The four of us recorded something for a British label. And then after a while, we recorded an indie album. And then we did 3 with ESP disc. One with the poet Amina Baraka. That's the wife and amazing poet in her own right. But Amiri Baraka was her husband. So we recorded that one with her in collaboration. And then the last 2 albums. And it just keeps growing. This lineup, I'd say, is exactly what we needed. There's no, the last album I tried playing drums on and simultaneous to vocals, and it was not easy.
Yeah.
I just decided, no. So there's no drummer on this.
Could we ask you to give us a little bit of a read, maybe a little bit of your Bleeding in Black Leather?
Sure thing. In fact, I'll just say this. The piece I'm going to read is an excerpt of the title piece of Bleeding in Black Leather. And if anybody just wants to get a free taste of what that sounds like with the band, they can go to that Bandcamp page. Again, the band is The Red Microphone. And you can hear that piece for free. And it's as much as I'm going to be reading here, except here without the wonderful musicians. Oh, and I should mention, the music that one hears on that is from Rocco John Iacovone. He composed, I asked him to compose a theme, and that theme gets split up over the course of the album. But this section is what's on there. The air restrains our mid-August fever, contained hungrily of greed and vice in the near cool of night. First Avenue dreams, though restlessly so, during what now passes for the after hours. Poets moan of downtowns past, yet the village hasn't been since Cobweb Hall went dark and the Bohemians, outed by prying eyes. Provincetown played Reed, O'Neill, and Millet, but Mabel Dodge shuttered her salon when Emma was deported and Jack left for Baku. Art was a weapon. Art was a weapon then, the masses anew, and cafe society bristled in blue. Strange fruit hung over Sheridan Square as daily workers shouted for freedom from want, freedom from fear, and Woody and Pete sang songs for John Doe. Cultural the rebel, the seer, entombed. It's just that one section.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Wow.
Cultural the rebel. Wow. Amazing.
And the piece gives the whole background, I should say, because you're both downtown people, and the full piece gives the entire almost history of underground arts in the village, East and West villages.
Right.
What would you say inspires you? And do you sometimes is anger, sometimes is social observation, sometimes is there any one thing or a combination of everything?
Yeah, I think that's it. It's really a little bit of everything. Yeah, in this case, it was, I started writing it and then I realized I can't leave it there. And it got longer and longer. And then I thought, wait, I skipped over this movement or that. And I, some of it like Cobweb Hall I mentioned.
Yeah.
Now, if you look that up, it's hard to find info on it, but I did research because I came across the name in like 1902 or 05. It was a place where the left-wing people hung out, and there were painters and whatnot among them. And it was just like a place, mostly anarchists at the time.
Was that in Manhattan?
Yeah. It was, I believe it was not far from like McSorley's. I believe it was right in that area. Had it stayed in business, it would have been older than McSorley's.
Wow, and McSorley's is old.
It's the oldest.
There, I'm not familiar with that.
It's an ale house, Tim. They have sawdust on the floor there.
They do. Yeah.
Where is that? Lower East Side or?
Yes.
Village. It's a village.
It's kind of like middle. I'm drawing a blank on the street now.
Oh, it's in the village.
Yeah, it's definitely in the village. And I remember using fake ID and going there at 16 with my boyfriend and my friends. And, this was such a big deal for us. I don't even like beer, by the way. But what a landmark it was.
Right, just to be there. Yeah, just to be there. Lori and I went again about, 4 years ago. And it was like, I thought it was a little cooler, but it was just a bunch of loud guys, drinking beer, watching sports. You can see that in any sports bar, but it's the oldest, so that's why it's there.
Right, and that's the claim to that. So, with everything that we know about you, John, I'm going to ask you this daring question: how the hell are you coping with now? With the post-pandemic, with the political situation? And and please feel free to speak your mind.
Yeah, I probably all progressives have been feeling this since Trump and since the movement that led to Trump. But the fact is, it's not new. Seriously, whether it be oppression against women and the right to their bodies and their right to privacy, or whether it be oppression against the LGBTQ community and the potential for the loss of marriage, and worse, right? Some of the laws that were going on in some of these places would get in the way of gay intimacy.
It's insane. Or that they could take someone's children away from them. Okay, some of these laws make that potential happen. This is really scary stuff.
It's insane, but it didn't start with Trump. That's
right.
I think personally, for me, before Trump, I'm sorry, but you got to point to who originated it. It started with Sarah Palin and what they call Tea Party politics. Boy, that was the originator of all of this.
Yeah, but how about we even step back beyond?
Let's do it.
Going back, I can't help but blame Reagan for every bad thing that has happened in this country since Reagan. And consider the fact that this man secretly was giving testimony to the House Un-American Activities Committee against dues-paying members of SAG while he was the president of that union, right? The Screen Actors Guild president.
Oh, it's a turncoat. That's exactly right. A lot of people don't know that, but that's exactly right.
That's why I always say it.
So under the circumstances, is there like some nugget of wisdom or anything that you would like to share about the world, about the state of our city, our state, our country, our world?
Yeah, the state of our state of mind.
The state of let's talk about the state of our state of mind.
Well, one good thing, okay, because my rule as an organizer is there's this old term that comes out: agitate, educate, organize. Agitation we don't need because we're already there, just watching, right? With the attempts at destruction of democracy is really what this comes down to. And not that we've ever had a true democracy, but we came pretty close. And suddenly they're trying to shred it and pretend it really didn't exist. So the educate part is really what we're talking about. And then the organized part, you can't leave people upset. You can't leave people ignorant. You have to sort of give some info and then talk about where you can go from there. Yeah. So here's what I'm seeing. Young people, in a way that I never dreamt would happen, think that labor unions are cool. Young people have no problem if their friend who they bring home to dinner is a different color, different religion,
Right.
if the person is gay or lesbian
Mhm.
or trans. I mean, could you imagine? Look,
Right.
your husband, Wendy, would probably say the same thing. I'm trying to imagine if I brought home a friend who was just flamboyantly open in his lifestyle. When I was in high school, my father would have fainted because that's not the thinking.
Right.
This time we're seeing a whole different thing.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
You know, I have a niece who's still in her 20s, and she's always like, oh, my friend came with his husband to visit.
Right. It's
Mhm.
normal language for them, as
Yeah,
it should
yeah.
be.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's
Isn't it?
absolutely wonderful.
I mean,
Now,
we got-
one last thing. How can people find out more about you?
well, I have a website.
Mhm.
Nobody could pronounce my last name, so thank you.
We did
having
a
it
good
there.
job.
You both did a great job, but no one could spell it if they can pronounce. So anyway, yeah, they can go to my website, johnpietaro.com, and that's really the easiest way because I've got links in there to excuse me, to the books
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. Also, the Bandcamp page. But I'm on social media. I'm pretty active on it, I think, and it's always under my name. I'm not a pseudonym person. No nom de plume. Need for that.
No nom de plume
Wonderful.
for this play from Bensonhurst.
John Pietaro, thank you so much. We
Thank
appreciate
you,
you coming on.
John.
Thank you
Oh,
both. I had a
God.
great time.
Yes.
So appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, now that concludes the broadcast for UBC TV. Now we're going on to the after party where we'll continue
Yeah.
talking with John here.
Now we
So
can.
thank you very much for your patience while I'm doing
Yeah.
the station breaks and all of that. I do
No
appreciate it.
problem. Please.
But I am, if I could just get one quick photo of the three of us while
Yes,
we're
absolutely.
okay. Just 1 second. It'll take just a second, and then we'll get back to questions. But I'm gonna have to duck out. Okay, in 3,
Sure.
2, 1. Oh, what'd I do? Wait a second. I did something wrong. Hold on. Where are we? Let me come back here.
Technical
Sorry.
difficulties.
Yeah. Oh, I know what I did wrong. Okay, let me try this again in just a second. In 3, 2, 1. Okay, and then I'll do one more in just a second. This is what we do normally after we sign off.
Right.
And 3, 2, 1. Yay. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Great.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you.
I'm going to have to jump off, but I
Yeah.
had such a great time talking to you, John. This was absolutely wonderful. Well,
I look forward up the road to saying hello in person.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah,
And
you
keep
totally
healing.
will.
You keep healing and getting to feeling better, okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you much.
And
All
now
right.
I have you all to myself to ask my endless questions that run through my mind. You talk about so you're an organizer. What do you do? What do you do in your job?
Well, these days, for the last very recently, the last couple of months, I work for Local 802, the Musicians Union.
Yeah.
I'm actually the director of organizing there, which has been
Wow.
great.
So you are first of all, God bless you. You're a union guy.
Mm.
You know, I'm a member of the acting unions, of course.
What was that, Equity?
SAG-AFTRA Equity, now SAG-AFTRA merge, right? Yeah. What's great about the union is what's great about it. They do, try and they fight for your rights. What's bad about the union in particular for actors right now is there's tons of non-union stuff that's hooked into print work. I do print work. I have lost, I cannot tell you, thousands of dollars in print work. Right. And that's wrong and unfair. So there's both a yin and a yang. Is there a yin and a yang to the musicians union?
Well, I think that, and unfortunately, the non-union work is ongoing, and this is a problem. In the past, 802 or AFM itself would say to the members, you can't do that. You can't do a non-union gig. And then they would sneak around and do them because they couldn't afford not to.
Right, exactly.
It's unfair.
Right, it's unfair.
So at this stage of the game, it's a new administration with 802, and my boss knows exactly how I feel. We can't alienate members or prospective members.
Right.
What we need to be able to do is encourage them to try to help us to help them to make their gigs union gigs. Yeah. I could tell you, I can't use a name, but there's a very big star who's a member of not a local 802, but he's an AFM member. He's a very, very established person who travels internationally, and he does so with pickup bands, and those people are always almost always union members, but he doesn't file union gigs for them. So they don't get benefits added.
Right. There's nothing added in.
Nothing for their pension. It's just money. So he's paying them a little bit above board, but that's it. And it's just not fair. And we've tried and tried. I even tried to sneak in backstage and went to one of his gigs. I wore my press credentials, which are authentic.
No, you have those too. I love that. Right.
I do. I wore the press credentials to just pretend I was writing an article. They wouldn't let me near anybody in the band. They literally, it's strange. The contractors and the management are very weird. So this person wants to do a big performance coming up with the New York Philharmonic. And New York Philharmonic is a very strong union shop.
Oh my gosh, of course.
So now there's going to be a real problem with that. And if this particular artist doesn't get it together and agree with us, Philharmonic won't want to do that gig with him.
Of course not. There's no reason for them to.
Yeah. So that might help to sort of break it down a little bit. But whether it be big name people or just small gigs where people are just trying to get by and make a living, it's a real problem.
Yeah, I don't know what the solution is. And I'm sure you've had this happen as well, because so many things now are digital and streaming. It doesn't matter what criteria unions can come up with. It is the Wild West. We have a lot of musicians on the show that really talk about, now it's easier than ever, right, to put your stuff on Spotify. And you mentioned Bandcamp. All the kids that I perform with, that I do shows with, that they're musicians, they all have their stuff on Bandcamp, right?
Sure.
But it's like everybody can do everything now. So where does that leave a person in terms of monetizing it? Is that even possible anymore?
It's a huge problem. The only thing I'd say that might be helpful is the AFM itself has been working on some kind of legislation with this, because you got to go to the top in some cases.
Yes, of course, right.
Yeah. So the legislation, if it does pass, there will be protections, and I'm assuming it'll be the same thing that goes for SAG-AFTRA, the streaming. Because it's not so much the streaming. It's not so much the streaming of things that were out as a film or were out as a record. Right. It's the things that are designed purely for streaming, right? Yes. So a TV show that goes directly to Netflix or something, right? Suddenly it's like, what are you going to do? And I know, because I've gotten this from the inside, I know what SAG-AFTRA has been fighting with. And so AFM is basically trying to work along the same line to figure out a way to change that. The local out in California, the musicians local in California, Local 47, they're really deep into this because they have all these soundtrack musicians working on those shows. It's rough.
Yeah. I tell you, it is really created such a dilemma, and it just feels to me like nowadays everybody's doing everything. Everybody's on Spotify. Everyone's on Bandcamp. It's just all over the place. Podcasting. Everyone's got a podcast. My PR person, I think at one point I said to her, how many podcasts do you think there are? She said, right now, and this was 2 years ago, she said 2 million and more, growing every day. So if everybody can hang out a shingle, so to speak, right? I'm sure you grew up with that phraseology. You can hang out a shingle. Now everybody can hang out a shingle. And
true.
There and a lot of this stuff, I know even with podcasts, you've got incredibly professional podcasts. And then I've been guests on podcasts that are like, certainly during the pandemic, right? People were home with nothing to do. So they started podcasting from their basement. And I don't know, everything just seems like such a big chaotic mess right now. What are we going to do, John? How are we going to fix it?
I wish I had all the answers. I don't think I have any.
But no answers. Well, you know what? You'll continue. You'll write books, right, and create music.
Right. For sure. That's for sure. And down at the bottom of Bleeding in Black Leather, this artwork on it, if you see down at the bottom, there's an old street sign there that says, "Don't even think of parking here."
Wait, I have to put my glasses on for it.
Tell me if you see that.
Well, so it's all the way. I'll try and put it the camera
That's
as
right.
close.
And-
Don't even think of parking here, right?
But you see where it got cut off by design?
Right.
Don't even think.
Oh my God. You are the man of subtle innuendos, okay?
But isn't that what it is?
I need to go back and read your writings again because I'm like, oh my Lord, I got like a fraction of it the first time around. And this is a case in point. Yeah. Don't even think.
That's the sad reality, though, that if the powers that be had their way, that's exactly what they would have us do, is to not think, or don't do, I should say, to think. But I don't know. It's hard to say. But there are the same way that SAG, AFTRA, Equity, when they were all completely separate, and for that matter, AFM and all the other unions, the same way they got through the terror of the radio and the horror of the records.
There you go.
Right?
No, you're right.
We'll get through this.
We will survive the streaming. Yes.
That's right.
Yes, we will. Yes, we can. See, John, now you have me like totally and completely fired up here today.
Good.
So I have to ask you, and I do sing your wife praises up and down the street. First of all, Lori Towers is a musician in her own right. And there's not a lot of women that play bass guitar. There's just not. That's not a sexist remark on my part. There just isn't, There's 2 million podcasters, but there's certainly not 2 million female bass players. The two of you work together, you play together. My husband and I make documentary films together, and he works on editing all my digital stuff as well. What is that like? Because he gets on my nerves sometimes. I don't and now with the pandemic, we're both working often out of the same space. I go to the gyms. I have to go to the gym sometimes just to do my stuff. Like how do we like this? We like this. We know we like this, but like, what's it like, when you're working with your spouse?
Well, we actually have worked together for a long time. We find a way to do it. And I know when to get out of the way.
I love that. My husband, who does the lighting on this show, is listening right now. Good. And how do you know when to good? This is for our audience too. John Pietaro, how do you know when to get out of the way?
If she has to say something twice to me, I know that means Lori's starting to lose patience. And if it's a day when if she's working, like, she does a lot of PR stuff. So if it's a day when she's going through a whole lot of things and she's flipping the phone, and I just know, let me not bother her then. But the fact is, we also work apart a lot, right? Like my day job,
right.
I'm in my office on 48th Street most days.
So that's good. There's a little break there.
There's a little break there. She just walked by and gave me a dirty look.
She gave you the look. Right, but she's got a little break. Lori, be grateful. She's got a little break. Well, that's good. No, because you know what? There has to be a balance. And we've had, a number of well-known celebrity musicians on this show with their spouses. One writes the songs, one performs the songs. Name people that you've heard of. And I've asked them that question because it's hard. It's hard when you're working together. And creative input is fabulous when you both have the same vision, but you're both individuals. Sometimes you have a different vision of something. Sure.
Well, the one thing I would say, though, is we've known each other for so long. And we've been married for 34 years, but we've known each other longer than that, considerably longer. Incredible. And we've played music. And Lori started playing the bass not that many years after I started playing drums, but she started to really get into it while she knew me. So she heard me drumming, and then she was continuing on learning to play the bass. And so she always says she kind of learned around what the role of the drummer would be, like in my case. So we know each other as a rhythm section. If I go back to drumming,
I love it. It was the rhythm section that connected us.
Yeah, right. And that, though, to me, it's, when there are tight rhythm sections, famous rhythm sections, they're impenetrable. Nothing gets in the way, no matter what happens on stage, because they know each other. Right. And that's one thing I'll say. So whether I'm playing a percussion instrument or I'm just reading, she's right there. And
Right.
as much as possible, I try to be right there. Although there's a few pictures where she's giving me a look like, what the hell are you doing? I'm going off course. So, and that's
What
what's
the hell is wrong with you? The death
right.
look.
But other than those times, it's generally, it works quite well. And I'm really pleased about that. And
Yeah,
she's
well,
my very favorite bass player. So can't get that.
I would hope so. 30 plus years is like, yeah. And what happens on stage, I'm sure a lot of it's instinctive. You start to be able to read each other's thoughts, which is, especially in this industry, it's an amazing thing to have when you have someone that you love and trust and has your back no matter what. So
Absolutely.
John, so what's next for you? Books, music, tell me.
Well, as far as other plans, I mean, at this point in time, we still have to consider doing, as soon as possible, some kind of a release party for both the book and the album, which
Yes.
you all will be happily
Oh my
invited
God,
to.
I already was inviting myself to it. Okay, yeah. So
Good.
I will put it on my calendar.
Well, just a matter of finding the proper venue. But we will be doing, and my guess is we'll probably, how it is hard to book places. It may have to wait even till October, but by then we should have it. So so there will be that, and there probably will be some other performances. But I must admit, I have so many things going on that it's kind of hard to envision spending a lot of time. I do want to do some readings in bookstores as well.
Absolutely.
And in addition to the local ones, and in Manhattan and Brooklyn, there's a great bookstore in Woodstock.
I know the one you're going to talk about because I know other people. Yeah,
So, the Golden Notebook.
Yeah.
So that's one. I've already been in touch with them, and I'm going to try to set up a reading on their schedule. They have like 2 or 3, I believe, a month. So that's one, because we love Woodstock. It's, other than the city, it's a great escape.
Woodstock is fabulous, but you know what? They can have that 3 hours on the throughway, because often now it can turn into 5 because everybody and their mothers there. I am in Milford, Pennsylvania. It's a big arts town, and I just did a book reading there. I love Milford. It is 1 hour and 40 minutes from New York. If you hit traffic, it's 2 hours and 10 minutes, and it is never more than that. I just gave up. I love Woodstock, but you know what? Ain't happening. Mama got no time to be sitting on the New York State Thruway.
It is long. It is long.
I'm like, by the time I get there. We just had some people tune in. I want to give shout outs to Sabine. Hello, how are you? Good evening. Twilo. Hi, Twilo. Apollonia. Love you, Apollonia. Thank you for tuning in. Ike Avelli, great to see you. Ike is a person I was talking to Tim about earlier, that they put up a video of Ike and Tim hysterically laughing in the car, completely out of control. I have only ever seen Ike with his glasses on. He's driving and he has no glasses. Okay. And you could only imagine it was like the car swerving in and out. And Facebook user who maybe says hello. I bet that's Teresa. Thank you for tuning in. John, so great. Really loved talking to you today, getting to know you better. Your wife is right. You're a sweetheart. And I love where you're coming from and what your poetry says and your spoken word. We broadcast from PANGEA. This would be a wonderful place for you to do an evening of your reading, spoken word, and as you talked about, combining everything and doing the music from here as well. Certainly, this is a Lower East Side establishment.
Oh, yeah.
It's been home to so many incredible people, and it would be great to have you guys come here as well. I want to thank the audience who tuned in today. Onward and upward. We're almost to the end of August. How the hell did that happen?
Quick.
It's quick. All right. And you know what? As I say, there's always tomorrow. We all have to plan our tomorrows and what's next on our agenda that we can do. Make the world a better place.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
Thank you, John. And
Thanks, Wendy.
everybody. Have a good one. Bye-bye.